And today I'm going to share the story with my beautiful cat Solo Bear and my beautiful teddies. Get cosy, everyone. Here we go. Once there was a soft brown toy called Dogger. One of his ears pointed upwards and the other flopped over. His fur was worn in places because he was quite old. He belonged to Dave. Dave was very fond of Dogger. He took him everywhere. Sometimes he even gave him rides in a trolley. Sometimes he pulled him along on a lead made of string like a real dog. And when it was cold, he wrapped him up in a bit of blanket. Now and again, Dave's mum said that Dogger was getting much too dirty. He showed Dave how to wash him in a bowl of soapy water. Then they hung him up by his tail on the washing line to dry. Dave's baby brother, Joe, liked hard toys. He liked putting them in his mouth and biting on them because he was getting teeth. And Dave's big sister Bella took 7 teddies to bed with her every single night. She had to sleep right up against the wall to stop herself from falling out. But Dave, well, he only liked Dogger. One afternoon, Dave and Mum set out to collect Bella from school. Mum took Joe in the pushchair and Dave, well, he took Dogger. And next to the school gate, where the mums were waiting, was a playing field. Some men with ladders were putting up coloured flags. Mum said that there was going to be a summer fair to get money to buy things for the school. Dave pushed Dogger right up against the railings to show him what was going on. Just then, the children started to come out of school. An ice cream van came round the corner playing a tune, and Bella ran up with her satchel flying. Mum, can we have an ice cream, please? Mum gave her the money for 2 cones. Joe didn't have a whole ice cream to himself because he was far too dribbly. And on the way home, Dave walked beside the pushchair, giving Joe licks of his ice cream. Joe kicked his feet about and shouted for more in-between licks. At tea time, Dave sadly was rather quiet. In the bath, he was even quieter, and at bedtime he said, "I want Dogger!" But Dogger was nowhere to be found. Mum looked under the bed. She looked behind the cupboard. She searched in the kitchen and underneath the stairs. And Dave watched anxiously through the banisters. Joe watched through the bars of his cot. Bella joined in to help look for Dogger. She turned her own toy box out in case he was in there, but he wasn't. And when Dad came home, he looked for Dogger too. He searched in the shed and down the garden path with a torch, but Dogger was quite lost. Dave was very sad when he went to bed. Bella kindly lent him one of her own teddies to go to sleep with, but it was just not the same as Dogger. Dave kept waking up in the night and missing him. The next day was Saturday, and all they went to the school summer fair. The playing field was full of stalls and sideshows. There was a fancy dress parade. Then there were sports, with an egg and spoon race, a wheelbarrow race, and even a father's race. Bella was very good at races. She won the 3-legged race with her friend Barbara. "Wouldn't you like to have a go in a race?" they asked Dave. But Dave didn't feel like racing. He was missing Dogger far, far too much. Then another very exciting thing happened to Bella. She won first prize in a raffle. It was a huge yellow teddy bear wearing a beautiful blue silk bow. He was almost as big as Dave himself. Dave didn't like that teddy at all. At that moment he didn't much like Bella either, because she kept on winning things. He went off on his own to look at the stalls with his hands in his pockets. One lady had a toy stall full of knitted ducks and cars and baby dolls in bonnets, and there, at the very back of the stall, behind a lot of other toys, was Dogger. He was wearing a ticket saying 5p. There were a lot of people round the stall. Dave tried to explain to the lady that it was his Dogger who'd got lost and somehow been put on the stall by mistake, but she wasn't listening. He looked in his pocket. He had 3p, but that wasn't enough. He ran to find Mum and Dad and to ask them to buy Dogger back at once. Dave went everywhere in the crowd, but he couldn't see his Mum and Dad. He thought he was going to cry. At last he found Bella by the cakes. When she heard about Dogger, she and Dave ran back to the toy stall as fast as they could. But something terrible had happened. Dogger had just been bought by a little girl. She was already walking off with him, and Dave began to cry. Bella ran after her and tried to explain that Dogger really belonged to Dave, and could they please buy him back? But the little girl simply said no. She said that she'd bought Dogger with her own money and she wanted him. She held on to him very, very tightly. Dave cried and cried, and the little girl started to cry too. But out of the corner of her eye, she caught sight of Bella's big yellow teddy. She stopped crying, put out her hand to stroke the beautiful blue silk bow. Then Bella did something exceptionally kind. Would you swap this teddy for my brother's dog then? She asked. Right away the little girl stopped crying and began to smile. She held out Dogger to Dave, took the big teddy instead, and went off with him in her arms. Then Dave smiled too. He hugged Dogger. He hugged Bella round the waist. "Thank you, Bella," he said. "Thank you." That night, Dave had Dogger in his bed beside him. Bella was practising somersaults. "Shall you miss that big teddy?" Dave asked her. "No," said Bella. "I didn't like him much, really. He was too big and his eyes were far too starey. Anyway, if I had another teddy in my bed, there wouldn't be any room for me." And they both snuggled down in their lovely beds with all their teddies, just like